Today's fairy tale is about a murderous ghost princess, and it's kind of similar to the vampire story I told a little while back called The Princess in the Chest, purportedly Danish from Andrew Lang's Pink Fairy book. There's a king and queen who can't have kids, and as usual, the king blames the wife and says, I'm gonna go away on a trip, and if you're not pregnant when I come back, I'm gonna be done with you. Totally logical. The queen goes to a wise woman who tells her that if she goes under the specific tree and eats the specific bud in the middle of a cluster of buds, she will get pregnant and give birth in 6 months. Kind of quick. But there's a catch. She says it'll be a girl and she will provide the nurse for her, but the girl and the nurse have to live in seclusion for 14 years. No one, not even the king and queen, can lay eyes on her until she's 14 years old, otherwise horrible things will happen. So it works. The queen gets pregnant, has the baby secluded with a nurse, and when the king comes home, he's like, I want to see her. And she's like, no, let me explain why we can't. And he's upset about it. The mom doesn't like it either, but they're like, all right, this is what we got to do. Well, the day before her 14th birthday, the king decides, I just can't wait any longer. What's a few more hours here and there gonna do? So he goes to see her. He bursts in and he sees the princess, who is lovely, red and white like milk and blood. Also with clear blue eyes and golden hair, but right in the middle of her forehead, a little tuft of brown hair. She falls to her knees and she's like, Father, I love you, but what have you done? Tomorrow I'm gonna die. And you're gonna have 3 choices. Either you're gonna have pestilence in the land, a long bloody war, or you put me in a coffin and keep a sentinel around it every night in a church. The king thinks she's just crazy, but he's like, I guess I choose the wooden chest. And then the next day she dies and he has to do that. But every night they put a sentinel in the church with the dead body, and every morning the sentinel is gone because her ghost wakes up and eats it. But the king has to keep up his end of the bargain, otherwise there's going to be pestilence or a bloody war, so he needs to keep putting sentinels out there, but no one wants to do it. So he starts offering things like money. Well, then this smith named Christian, who's from out of town, comes into the country, sits down to have a meal at an inn, and all of these officers are like, hey, new guy, you need to go stand sentinel, please. He says no, but then the officers get him drunk, and he starts to think, maybe it is a good idea. They're like, the king will give you $100, and he's like, you're right, yeah, hell yeah, I'll go do it. So he goes to go do it, and he's brave for a little while, but after a few hours, the wine wears off, and he's like, oh no, I don't want to do this. And he tries to leave, but then this little man appears and knows his name, and he's like, where are you going, Christian? Christian says, nowhere. And he's like, no, you were going to run away, but don't worry, I'm going to help you survive the night. Go to the pulpit and stay behind the pulpit and you'll be safe. And so Christian does. The clock strikes 12 and the princess comes out of her coffin. She flies at Christian to get him, tears things up, but because he's behind the pulpit, he's protected. This happens from midnight to 1, and then at 1 a.m. she has to go back in the coffin. So he sleeps for the rest of the night, and then in the morning they come in and they're like, oh my God, you survived. And they take him to the king, and the king's like, oh my God, here's $100. How did you do this? He's like, I don't know, I was just really brave. The king's like, well, you need to do it again tonight. And he's like, no. And he's like, what? Hey, you want a drink? So Christian gets drunk again. And then the king offers him tons of gold, more than $100. So he agrees to do it again. And then the little old man helps him again, this time not just standing behind the pulpit, but reading a prayer book. Again, the ghost howls and screams, but can't touch him. He survives another night. Again, everyone wants him to do it again, and he doesn't want to, but they get him drunk. And then finally he says, all right, I'll do it again for half the kingdom. And the king's like, I got no other choice. It's pestilence and war if I don't. So he does it again a third night, and this time, like happens in a lot of Eastern European vampire stories, the little man tells him when she comes out of the coffin, get in the coffin. And so he does that, and she cannot get at him when he's in the coffin. She screams, war and pestilence will begin, all of these bad things will happen, but he stays in the coffin until morning. Then the princess's ghost disappears, and he suddenly hears music filling the whole church. Sounds like people filling it. He hears a priest offering a prayer of thanksgiving. He can hear the most beautiful singing ever, but he can't see anybody around him. And eventually they all leave, like their footsteps die away, and then light breaks through the windows. He springs out of the coffin, and in front of the altar is the princess, who's alive again, red and white again. She's crying and shaking in her burial shroud, so he goes over to her, kind of helps warm her up, and she wipes her tears and says, thank you, you have saved me. She also says, hey, if you want to marry me, I will marry you. But if you don't want to marry me, I'm going to have to go be a nun forever. Because, surprise, we just got married in that magical invisible church ceremony. That was the ceremony of the dead. So, either take me or I'm going to, go live chaste forever. Well, since she's the most beautiful thing he's ever seen, and he now is gonna get half her kingdom anyway, he decides to marry her, and they live happily ever after. And interestingly, the story doesn't end there, but this little piece about how everyone basically decides to forget that anything supernatural ever happened. People just decide all those sentries who disappeared, they probably just ran away. And Christian even thinks everything I saw was probably because I was drunk. Whatever you gotta tell yourself, dude. As always, check out my book, Dust Spells, a reimagining of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which is also ghostly and full of revenge and powerful women. And my podcast, all the links are in the bio.